You need to listen to me for a second. Whatever TV show you're watching, stop it right now. Whatever medical drama that you're hooked into, detach. Whatever anime you can't stop watching, get out of the basement. Whatever horror movie that you can't get your eyes off of, shut them. Whatever it is, summon the strength, build up the willpower, and turn it off, because you are missing the best show on Netflix right now. It is the now long-awaited sequel to the Karate Kid cinematic classic that you and I loved. And I'm not talking about whatever it was that the Jaden Smith and the Jackie Chan version was. I first remember seeing the ads for it on YouTube as a YouTube exclusive, and I thought, that sounds like a terrible freaking idea. I thought, and at the time rightfully so, that there was nothing YouTube itself without the help of its community could create that would ever amount to anything. And I'm still correct about that, by the way, because this story is no longer a YouTube exclusive. In fact, it's now a Netflix exclusive. And listen, I know Netflix has its share of debacles, like the most recent Cuties controversy, or the Jessica Jones adaptation, which was pure and utter garbage, or the most recently released Umbrella Academy, which is even worse than the Jessica Jones series. And honestly, my first thought when I saw the show was, I'll watch it, but only because there's nothing else to watch since I've gone through everything during COVID. And let me run it through for you why it is that it is a criminal offense how good Cobra Kai is compared to the rest of the Netflix shows. First, let's break down the setting. The premise of the show is still in California, it's just a couple decades later. Daniel Larusso is still cashing in on his fame as the Karate Kid, now running multiple dealerships throughout the valley. He's married to his beautiful wife, he has 2 kids, his life is fantastic. But life has not been kind to Johnny Lawrence, who is pretty much a waste of space, a jerk to everyone he meets, and a deadbeat drunk father. Johnny's life is pretty much rock bottom, and he drives every single day by billboard after billboard after billboard with Daniel LaRusso's face square in the center of it. And each one of them remind him of the fight that he lost all those years ago. However, his life will change forever when he meets Miguel Diaz, the adorkable, laughable, nerdy high schooler who gets beat up constantly by his bullies. Just by happenstance, Johnny is right next to them as a brawl breaks out. And although at first he's not very inclined to enter the fight spills over to him and he has no choice but to defend himself and beat senseless all the high schoolers who are bullying Miguel Diaz, which in real life would get you put in prison for a lot longer than the 24 hours he's in there. Miguel, in awe of his amazing skill that he still retains after all these years, begs him to train him in the way of karate. After some resistance, Johnny finally agrees to train him, but not in the way of karate, but in the way of Cobra Kai.
If you're a loser, or a nerd, or a freak, all that matters is that you become badass.
So sick. The plot starts to thicken as you realize, however, that Johnny has 2 people who look to him as father figures in their life. Johnny's son, Robbie, is a truant, a vandal, pretty much everything that Johnny was at the very beginning of the original Karate Kid. And the show gets even weirder when you realize that Robbie Keene and Miguel Diaz are competing for the same girl in this weird high school love triangle, Samantha LaRusso, the daughter of Daniel Larusso. There are crazy amounts of things going on in the show at all times, and honestly, I'm here for it. Now let's take a look at the main characters individually. 34 years later, Daniel Larusso is as successful as everyone thought he was going to be, but he's doing it without the help of his master, Mr. Miyagi. Although Daniel still to this day remains a good person at heart, he's let a lot of distractions into his life, a lot of things that take him away from the things that matter most. And when Johnny re-enters his life, he starts to let that rivalry brood inside of him, start to really take place in that hole in his heart. This creates an epic storyline wherein he returns as the Karate Kid master that we all knew he was, and he takes Mr. Miyagi's place, training Robbie Keene and Samantha LaRusso to combat the new Cobra Kai dojo that Johnny Lawrence has established. The story does really well in exploring his character motivations and also highlighting that although he's a good person, this doesn't mean he's perfect. He does a lot of crappy things throughout the show, and it only enhances the story. Johnny Lawrence is the exact same at the beginning of the show as he was at the end of the last show, and it's awesome. He has a very compelling story, and he's a very good anti-hero, one that you are honestly rooting for only a couple episodes in. Even though he's a jerk to everyone, you don't care because you love him. Some of his most compelling arcs are him coming to terms and reconciling with his son Robbie Keene, who he really has abandoned and left his fathership duties behind for. He also needs to evolve from the butt-kicking bully that he once was into a responsible sensei who cares for and loves his students and prides himself on showing them how to compete in the right way. Over the course of the show, you watch him turn his life around, even when everything seems to be going wrong, and at the end of season 2, even when everything seems to have burned around him. Miguel is a brilliant character in the series, and the reason for that is because Miguel starts out as a good-hearted person who has no idea how to fight. And throughout the course of the series, he becomes a person who knows how to fight, but becomes more and more like someone that Johnny Lawrence once was, which is what Johnny sees and becomes afraid of throughout the series. As Miguel begins to evolve throughout the show, you watch him transform from that innocent, sweet, loving kid that you all rooted for at the beginning into a merciless and effective destroyer of body and bone that you really don't recognize at the very end of the show, and it's awesome. Robbie's story is your typical American comeback story where he starts at the bottom and now he's here. And most of the series, he's straddling that line between forgiving his father and holding him accountable for all the mistakes that he's made. It makes for some really interesting character dynamics, especially between him and Mr. Larusso, who still sometimes suspects him because he's Johnny's son. And it also makes it even more interesting when you realize that he's in direct competition with Miguel, who is now his father's favorite student, for the daughter of the man who hates his father, Samantha Larusso. Oftentimes I feel bad because a lot of the characters in these stories that are female love interests don't usually get a fair shake in terms of character development. A lot of times female characters are boiled down into eye candy for the plot and the main characters, and that's really it. This show doesn't do that very much. In fact, Samantha makes a lot of her own decisions that end up screwing both Miguel and Robbie over, and it's entertaining as balls. Samantha Larusso really holds her own, but she plays an even more central role as the show goes on, which is also something that's really rare. But I know the real question you're all asking. What about the fight scenes in this TV show? Are they any good? Do they hold up to the iconic nature of the old fights in The Karate Kid? Did they bring anything new into the mix? Yes, the fights in this show are extremely good, especially when compared to a lot of other TV series. The fighting is intense, it's really entertaining, and you don't ever really get bored visually. There's a specific shot in the battle at the high school in the final episode of season 2, where there's a long pan up and down the hallway, and Danny's dojo students and Cobra Kai members are doing an all-out fight up and down the hallway. It's uninterrupted, and it's probably one of the best elements of cinematography in the entire series. And there's typically a pretty good reason why they're fighting. They're usually not just going out of their way to fight each other because it's a karate show and they remember they need to throw in a couple of flips and kicks. However, for those of you who are looking for iconic moves that will just blow your mind, you're not going to find anything here. It is very TV-centric, and so there isn't a setup for a whole lot of really good moves. Mostly what the show contains are references to the old moves, like the crane kick that Danny uses to beat Johnny at the end of the first movie. So there are definitely moments that are used to salute the old movies, but there isn't anything innovative that's going to blow your mind. It's going to be really good, and it's going to be really entertaining, and that's pretty much all I can really promise in terms of fighting in the show. And for those of you that are wondering whether or not Dimitri is the most annoying character probably on television today, yes, we share that opinion. Everybody hates him, nobody likes his character. He's probably the only good character that we absolutely root against in pretty much every single circumstance. Like I said, guys, this show is underrated, undervalued, and unknown to most of the people who watch Netflix. And I would give it 2 enthusiastic thumbs up. This is a show you need to be on top of. This is a show you need to watch. And if you're a huge fan of the original Karate Kid, I promise you, I do not think you'll be disappointed. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching the video. Like and subscribe if you want to see more content, and let me know what it is that you think about the show, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and what it is that you want to see in the future. Until then, I'm Jackson, and I'll see you guys later.